Chicago had always been cold in the winter, but somehow Jake Carter had always made it feel warmer. I met Jake when we were 8 years old, on a rainy afternoon in Evanston, Illinois. We were sitting in the same third-grade classroom, surrounded by construction paper snowflakes and the smell of wet coats drying against the radiators. I was carefully coloring a picture of a blue house when my favorite blue crayon disappeared. I looked around. Then I saw Jake. He was sitting 2 desks away, coloring his entire sky blue with my crayon. "That's mine," I said. He looked at the crayon, then at me, then back at the crayon. "No, it isn't. It has my name on it." He looked closer. Sure enough, I'd written Ethan on the paper wrapper. Jake thought for a second. "I borrowed it." "You didn't ask." "I was going to." "When?" He smiled. "Tomorrow." I hated him for exactly 3 minutes. Then he made me laugh. That was Jake. He could walk into your life like a disaster and somehow become the one person you couldn't imagine living without. By middle school, we were inseparable. By high school, people stopped asking where one of us was. They simply assumed the other knew. Jake was the loud one. I was the quiet one. He acted first. I thought first. He could talk his way out of almost anything. I could barely order food over the phone without rehearsing the conversation first. We should have been completely incompatible. Instead, we fit, like 2 pieces of a puzzle that had no business belonging together. Jake had dark brown hair that was always messy, hazel eyes that looked almost green in certain light, and a smile that got him into trouble almost as often as it got him out of trouble. He played football. I ran the school newspaper. He loved parties. I preferred quiet coffee shops. He made friends in 5 minutes. I needed 5 weeks. But there was one thing we had always shared. Neither of us liked being alone. And somehow, whenever one of us felt lonely, the other always appeared. During senior year, Jake started dating more seriously. There was Madison. Then Claire. Then a girl named Brooke who broke up with him because he forgot their anniversary. Jake called me at midnight. "She hates me." "You forgot your anniversary." "I was busy." "You were playing Madden." "I was under emotional pressure." "You were winning." There was silence. "You're supposed to support me." "I'm supporting reality." He laughed. And I smiled even though he couldn't see me. That was how our friendship worked. He complained. He was talking about a girl from his chemistry class. I wasn't listening. I was watching him smile, and suddenly the truth arrived. Quietly. Completely. I love him. I looked away. My heart started pounding. I didn't know what to do with the feeling, so I buried it. I told myself it was a phase, that it would disappear, that someday I'd meet someone else, someone who wasn't Jake, someone who could actually love me back. But the feeling didn't disappear. It grew. By the time we left for college, I had become an expert at hiding it. We both went to Northwestern University in Chicago. Jake studied sports management. I studied journalism. We rented apartments in the same neighborhood during our second year. He called my place his second home. He had a toothbrush in my bathroom, a hoodie permanently hanging over my chair, shoes under my bed. He never asked permission. He simply belonged. And I let him. Because having him close was painful, but having him far away would have been worse. I came out to him during our sophomore year. I'd rehearsed the conversation for an entire week. We were sitting behind the university library on a freezing afternoon. Jake was eating a bagel. I was holding a cup of coffee with both hands because they wouldn't stop shaking. "I need to tell you something." Jake looked at me. "That sounds serious." "It is." He frowned. "You joining a cult?" "No." "You killed someone?" "No, Jake." "Okay." He put the bagel down. "Tell me." I took a breath. "I'm gay." For a moment, he didn't react. The silence felt enormous. I watched his face carefully. I prepared myself for everything. Confusion. Discomfort. Distance. maybe even rejection. Instead, he blinked. Then he picked up his bagel. I stared at him. That's it. He shrugged. What do you want me to say? I don't know. He took another bite. Then he swallowed. Okay. Okay. Yeah. He looked at me. Thank you for trusting me. My throat tightened. That's all. Jake frowned. Why wouldn't it be? I thought maybe. I stopped. He leaned closer. Hey. I looked at him. You're still Ethan. I smiled faintly. You're still annoying. Exactly. He pointed at me. And I'm still stealing your fries. I laughed. Then Jake grinned. Nothing changed. For the first time in a week, I could breathe. Then he added, although this raises one important question. What? Do I have a shot? I shoved him so hard that he nearly dropped his coffee. He laughed. I laughed too. And for a few seconds, everything felt normal. Maybe too normal. Because Jake didn't become uncomfortable around me. He didn't stop hugging me. He didn't avoid me. He didn't treat me like I was suddenly a stranger. If anything, he became even closer. He started sleeping on my couch after late-night study sessions. He stole my hoodies. He fell asleep beside me during movies. Sometimes, when he was exhausted, he'd rest his head against my shoulder without thinking. And every time he did, I reminded myself, he's straight. He's your best friend. Don't confuse friendship with something else. So I learned to survive on little things. A hand on my shoulder. A late-night call. A smile. A text me when you get home. I collected those moments like someone collecting coins. They weren't enough to buy what I wanted, but they were enough to keep me hoping. By senior year, everyone on campus knew Jake and I were inseparable. Where's Jake? Probably with Ethan. Where's Ethan? If Jake's here, Ethan can't be far. People joked that we were an old married couple. Jake always laughed. I always laughed too. Because telling the truth would have destroyed everything. One night at a party, a girl named Lauren looked between us and asked, "So, are you two actually dating?" Jake nearly choked on his drink. He wishes. Everyone laughed. I laughed too. Later that night, I stood outside on the balcony alone. Jake found me. You know I was kidding, right? I looked at him. Yeah. He frowned. You seem weird. I'm tired. He took off his jacket and placed it around my shoulders. You were cold. I looked down at the jacket, then at him. Thanks. He smiled. No problem. He walked away. I stood there holding his jacket around me, breathing in the faint scent of his cologne. And I hated myself for how much that small gesture meant. The truth about loving your best friend is that you become very good at surviving on scraps. A glance. A smile. A hug. A jacket. A midnight phone call. So I didn't tell Jake. I stayed quiet. I stayed beside him. And I loved him from a distance so small that nobody else could see it. Then Olivia Bennett entered his life. And for the first time, I realized that keeping my secret might not be enough to protect me. Olivia was everything I wanted to hate. Beautiful. Smart. Funny. Kind. She was a theater major with honey brown skin, dark eyes, and a laugh that made Jake laugh even harder. I met her during a campus event. She smiled at me. So you're Ethan. I looked at Jake. You've been talking about me? Jake shrugged. Only the embarrassing stuff. Olivia laughed. I've heard a lot. I smiled. All lies. Probably. She was impossible to dislike, and that made everything worse, because Jake liked her, really liked her. Within weeks, she became part of our lives. She sat with us at lunch. She joined our movie nights. She came to football games. She knew Jake's favorite songs. She knew how he took his coffee. She knew how to make him laugh. And I watched it all. Quietly. Smiling. Pretending that the ache in my chest was nothing. One evening, Jake and I were driving through downtown Chicago. Olivia had gone home early. The city lights moved across the windshield. Jake turned the radio down. "You know what?" "What?" I stared out the window. "You mean that?" "Of course." He smiled. "You're the best, Ethan." I looked out the window again, because he didn't know. He had no idea that hearing him call me the best person in his life could hurt more than being ignored. He didn't know that every time he told me about Olivia, I went home and reminded myself that loving him didn't mean I was entitled to him. He didn't know that sometimes I wished he would see me differently. And he definitely didn't know that I was slowly reaching the point where pretending was becoming impossible. A few weeks later, the annual Fall Arts Festival began. The entire Northwestern campus came alive. Music. Lights. Food stalls. Performances. Thousands of people moving through the streets. Jake was handling sponsorships. Olivia was directing one of the main performances. I was working logistics. For 2 weeks, we barely slept. One night, around midnight, Jake and I sat outside the auditorium eating cold fries. He nudged my knee. "So?" I sighed. "What?" "You ever going to date someone?" I laughed. "Why are you obsessed with my dating life?" "Because you don't have one. Maybe I like being single." "That's boring." "You're one to talk." He grinned. "I have options." I rolled my eyes. He became quiet. Then he looked at me. "You used to tell me everything." My smile disappeared. "No." His voice was softer. "Not everything." I stared at him. The noise of the festival continued around us. People laughed. Music played. Lights flashed across the auditorium. But suddenly, all I could hear was Jake. "You've been different lately," he said. "I'm fine." "You always say that when you're not." I looked away. Maybe he was getting too close. Maybe he was finally starting to notice. "I just have a lot going on." Jake studied me. Then he leaned closer. "You know you can tell me anything, right?" My heart hurt. Because that was exactly the problem. I wanted to tell him everything. I wanted to tell him that I loved him, that I had loved him for years, that every time he touched me, my heart betrayed me, that every time he called me his best friend, part of me wished he would call me something else. But I couldn't. Not yet. So I smiled. "Yeah, Jake." He smiled back. "Good." Then someone called his name from inside. He stood. "We'll finish this later." I nodded. "Sure." He disappeared into the auditorium. I watched him go. And somehow I already knew. Whatever happened next was going to change everything. I just didn't know whether it would bring Jake closer to me, or finally take him away. The second week of the fall festival was when everything began to unravel. Until then, I had managed to convince myself that nothing had changed. Jake still called me every morning. He still stole food from my plate. He still sent me ridiculous memes at 2 in the morning. He still walked into my apartment without knocking. Everything looked normal. But underneath all of it, something had shifted. Maybe it was because Jake had started noticing me differently. Or maybe I had simply become more aware of every little thing he did. The way his eyes stayed on me for a second too long. The way he sometimes started to say something and then stopped. The way his smile disappeared whenever I mentioned dating. I tried not to think about it. Thinking about it was dangerous. Because hope was far more frightening than rejection. Rejection would hurt once. Hope could hurt forever. One Thursday evening, the festival committee was working late inside the auditorium. The building smelled like dust, coffee, and old curtains. People were running everywhere. Someone was arguing about lighting. Someone else was looking for missing microphones. Jake was on a ladder, trying to hang a string of lights. I looked up at him. "Get down." He glanced at me. I'm fine. You're standing on the top step. I've got balance. You have absolutely no balance. He grinned. You worry about me too much. Because you make terrible decisions. That's why I have you. My heart skipped. He climbed down. When his feet touched the floor, he stood directly in front of me. For a second, neither of us moved. He looked into my eyes. Then he smiled. See? Still alive. I forced a laugh. Unfortunately, he laughed. Then Olivia called his name. He turned toward her. I watched him walk away. I hated the jealousy. I hated myself for feeling it. Olivia hadn't done anything wrong. She loved him. He loved her. At least that's what I believed. Later that night, I went backstage looking for a missing box of prop tape. That's when I heard voices. Jake and Olivia. I stopped. I hadn't intended to listen, but then Olivia said my name. Why is it always Ethan? I froze. Jake sounded frustrated. Because he's my best friend. That's not what I mean. What do you mean? You go to him for everything. He's my best friend. You keep saying that. Because it's true. Olivia was silent. Then she spoke more softly. Jake, I'm not accusing you of cheating. Then what? I'm saying you feel something for him. My heart stopped. Jake didn't answer. The silence seemed endless. Finally, he said, That's ridiculous. Is it? He's my best friend. I know. So? You don't look at your other friends the way you look at him. My breathing became shallow. I should have left. Instead, I stayed. Jake sighed. I love him. My heart broke. But then Olivia said, I know. Jake continued. He's family. Olivia's voice became almost a whisper. Maybe you're calling it family because you're afraid to call it something else. Silence. Jake didn't answer. I couldn't listen anymore. I walked away. My legs carried me through the hallway and up the stairs before I even realized what I was doing. I pushed open the rooftop door. Cold air hit my face. Chicago stretched beneath me. Thousands of lights. Cars moving through the streets. People walking below. Everything continued as if my world hadn't just cracked open. I wrapped my arms around myself. Olivia was wrong. She had to be wrong. Jake was straight. He loved women. He loved Olivia. He loved me as his best friend. That was all. It had to be. The roof door opened again. I didn't turn around. You heard us. Jake, of course. I stared at the city. Yeah. He walked closer. I'm sorry. You don't have to apologize. I should have told you she was upset. Why? I don't know. I laughed bitterly. Maybe because you knew I'd take it personally. He stopped. Ethan. I turned around. Just tell me the truth. What truth? Do you feel something for me? He stared at me. His face changed. I don't know. That answer hurt more than I expected. You don't know? No. I shook my head. Jake, that's not fair. I know. You can't look at me like that and then tell me you don't know. He frowned. Like what? Like you want to say something. He stepped closer. I don't know what I'm supposed to say. Nothing. I turned away. Forget it. No. His voice was firm. I looked back. He was standing only a few feet away. Don't do that. Do what? Shut me out. I laughed. You don't understand. Then explain it. I stared at him. The words I'd buried for years suddenly felt impossible to hold. You want me to explain? Yes. Fine. I took a breath. I'm in love with you. Jake froze. The wind moved between us. I continued before I lost the courage. I have been for years. His eyes widened. I know you're straight. I laughed softly. That's why I never told you. Jake didn't speak. I didn't want to lose you. My voice broke. You're the most important person in my life. He looked away. I wiped my eyes quickly. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. I shouldn't have said it. Why? Because now everything is ruined. He shook his head. No. Jake. You didn't ruin anything. Then why are you looking at me like that? He stepped closer. I don't know. That's what you keep saying. Because it's true. He ran a hand through his hair. I've never thought about this before. I stared at him. Never. Not like this. Then what was that with Olivia? He looked confused. What? The way she talked about you. Jake looked down. I've been thinking about it. My heart started beating faster. About what? About why I always need you. I didn't speak. Why I call you first. He swallowed. Why I feel better when you're around. Jake. I thought it was just friendship. Maybe it is. Maybe. He stepped closer. But I'm not sure anymore. That sentence changed everything. I took a step backward. Don't. Don't what? Don't give me hope if you're not sure. His expression tightened. I don't want to hurt you. You already are. He looked devastated. I don't know what to do. Neither do I. I turned toward the door. Jake grabbed my wrist. Not hard. Just enough to stop me. Don't leave. I looked down at his hand, then back at him. You need time. I know. So take it. I don't want you to disappear. I won't. But you're walking away, because I have to protect myself. He let go. I reached for the door. Then I heard his voice. Ethan. I stopped. He was quiet for several seconds. Then, when you said you loved me, I turned. His eyes were fixed on mine. I felt something. My heart stopped. What? I don't know what. He took a breath. But something. Couldn't move. Jake walked toward me. One step. Then another. I whispered his name. He stopped in front of me. I don't understand this. You don't have to. I've never felt this way about a guy. I know. But when you said you were leaving, his voice became quieter. I couldn't breathe. I looked at him. Jake. He lifted his hand. For a moment, it hovered beside my face. Then his fingers touched my cheek. My entire body went still. He looked terrified. So did I. Tell me to stop, he whispered. Couldn't. He leaned closer. And then he kissed me. The world disappeared. For years, I'd imagined what kissing Jake would feel like. None of those dreams had been right, because this wasn't a fantasy. It was real. His hand rested gently against my cheek. His other hand held my shoulder. The kiss wasn't rushed. It wasn't careless. Felt like a question. And somehow my heart knew the answer. When he pulled away, we stared at each other. Neither of us spoke. I touched my lips. Jake looked stunned. What did I just do? I whispered. You kissed me. He gave a nervous laugh. I know. Why? He looked at me. Because I wanted to. My heart pounded. You wanted to? Yes. He swallowed. But I don't know what that means. I stepped back. Then don't do it again. His face fell. Why? Because I can't survive being your experiment. Ethan. I mean it. I wasn't experimenting. Then what were you doing? He looked at me for a long moment. I don't know. I closed my eyes. That answer hurt. Again. Before either of us could say more, the rooftop door opened. A stage manager stepped outside. "There you two are. We've been looking everywhere." Jake immediately stepped away from me. I forced my face to look normal. "We're coming." She nodded and disappeared. Jake looked at me. "We need to talk." "Not tonight." "Ethan." "I'm serious." He nodded slowly. "Okay." I walked toward the door. He said my name one more time. I stopped. But I didn't turn around. "I don't regret it," he whispered. My eyes closed. Neither did I. That was the problem. The rest of the night passed in a blur. The festival continued. Music filled the auditorium. People cheered. Lights flashed across the stage. Everyone celebrated. Nobody knew that my entire world had changed on the roof. Jake barely looked at me. Or maybe he looked at me too much. Couldn't tell. Olivia stayed away from both of us. By 2 in the morning, the festival finally ended. People wanted to go downtown. I said I was tired. I went back to my apartment. I sat on my bed. I stared at my phone. I expected Jake to call. He didn't. 1 hour passed. Then another. At 3:07 a.m., my phone finally lit up. Jake Carter. I stared at his name. It stopped. Then it rang again. I didn't answer. The third time I picked up. "Hello." For several seconds there was silence. Then Jake spoke. "I can't sleep." I closed my eyes. "Neither can I. I keep thinking about what happened." "So do I." "I don't regret it." My heart tightened. "But I'm scared." I swallowed. "Of me?" "No." His voice became softer. "Of what it means." I looked at the dark window. "You don't have to decide tonight." "I know. But you need to be honest with yourself." "I will." Silence. Then Jake asked, "Are you going to disappear?" "No." "Promise." I smiled sadly. "I promise." He exhaled. "Good. Good. I don't think I could handle losing you." My chest tightened. "Jake." "I mean it." Neither of us spoke for a long time. Finally, he said, "Good night, Ethan." "Good night." The call ended. I placed the phone beside me. For years, I'd been afraid that loving Jake would destroy our friendship. Now I was beginning to realize something even more frightening. Maybe the kiss hadn't destroyed anything. Maybe it had opened a door. And neither of us knew what was waiting on the other side. The morning after Jake kissed me, Chicago looked exactly the same. That was the cruelest part. Cars still moved through the streets. Students still hurried across campus carrying coffee. Professors still complained about late assignments. The coffee shop downstairs still played the same terrible music every morning. Everything was normal. Except me. I woke up at 8:17 a.m. with Jake's name still on my mind. I stared at the ceiling. Then I remembered the rooftop. His hand against my cheek. His voice. "I don't regret it." I closed my eyes. Maybe I was dreaming. Maybe I had finally imagined the one thing I'd spent years trying not to imagine. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Jake. "Jake, you awake?" I stared at it for nearly a minute. "Me, unfortunately." 3 dots appeared. "Jake, same." Then, "Jake, can we talk?" My stomach tightened. "Me sure." He didn't reply immediately. A few seconds later, "Jake." Not over text. I knew what that meant. The conversation we'd both been avoiding was finally coming. We met that afternoon at a small coffee shop near campus. Jake was already there. He was sitting by the window, wearing a black hoodie and staring at his untouched coffee. When he saw me, he stood. "Hey! Hey!" We sat across from each other. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, Jake said, "I've been thinking." I smiled weakly. "That's dangerous." He laughed. It was a small laugh, but it felt familiar. For a moment, we were just Jake and Ethan again. Best friends. Then the memory of the kiss returned. Jake looked down. I don't know what I'm doing. I know. I've never questioned this part of myself before. I know. And I don't want you to think I kissed you because I felt sorry for you. I don't. Or because Olivia said something. I don't. Or because I was drunk. You weren't. I know. He looked frustrated. I just need you to understand. I do. He stared at me. Do you? I nodded. More than you think. He took a slow breath. I'm confused. Those words still hurt. But this time I was ready for them. You don't have to figure everything out today. I know. But you do need to be honest. I am trying. Then that's enough. He looked relieved. For a moment we sat quietly. Then he asked, Are you angry with me? I thought about it. No. Why not? Because you didn't promise me anything. He looked at me. You told me how you felt. I kissed you. I don't know what happens next. I smiled sadly. Exactly. Jake looked down at his coffee. I was scared after you left. Why? Because I thought maybe I'd lost you. You didn't. But it felt like it. I swallowed. Jake. He looked at me. I don't want us to become strangers. We won't. Promise. I smiled. Again. Again. He laughed. Then his expression became serious. I don't want to lose you. I know. But I also don't want to pretend the kiss didn't happen. My heart skipped. Okay. He nodded. Okay. We left the coffee shop together. For the first time since the rooftop, the tension between us felt slightly lighter. But it didn't disappear. It followed us everywhere. The next few weeks were strange. Jake was still Jake. He still sent me stupid videos. Still stole food. Still showed up at my apartment without warning. But there was a new hesitation between us. He would sometimes reach for my shoulder and stop. Sometimes our hands would touch and he'd pull away. Sometimes we'd catch each other's eyes across a room. And neither of us would look away immediately. I tried to give him space. It was harder than I expected. Because every time I gave him distance, he seemed to move closer. One Friday evening, Jake showed up at my apartment carrying 2 pizza boxes. I brought dinner. You brought pizza. Exactly. You know pizza isn't dinner. That's where you're wrong. I stepped aside. He walked in. How was your day? Fine. Mine was terrible. Why? Coach gave us a presentation about career planning. You hate planning. I hate being responsible. I laughed. He smiled. For a while, things felt normal. We sat on the couch. We watched a movie. Jake complained about the acting. I told him to shut up. He threw popcorn at me. I threw it back. Then, halfway through the movie, Jake became quiet. I looked at him. What? He shook his head. Nothing. You're staring. I know. Why? He looked at me. I don't know. My heart started beating faster. He looked away. Sorry. You don't have to apologize. He nodded. We returned our attention to the television. But neither of us was watching anymore. A few days later, Jake and Olivia ended their relationship. I found out from Jake. He came to my apartment late that night. I opened the door. His face looked exhausted. Can I come in? Of course. He sat down. I didn't ask immediately. I waited. Finally, he said, Olivia broke up with me. My heart sank. I'm sorry. He nodded. I deserved it. Don't say that. It's true. What happened? He rubbed his hands together. She said she couldn't keep dating someone who wasn't emotionally present. I didn't know what to say. Did you tell her about me? No. I looked at him. Then why? He gave me a tired smile. Because she already knew. My stomach tightened. She knew. She said I looked at you differently. I looked away. Jake continued. She said she didn't hate you. She doesn't have a reason to. I know. He stared at the floor. She told me something before she left. What? Jake was quiet. Then, she said I should stop being afraid of the answer. I looked at him. And what answer is that? He lifted his eyes. I don't know yet. I nodded. That's okay. He looked surprised. You really mean that? Yes. Even after everything? Jake, I love you. The words came naturally now. He looked down. I know. And I don't want you to choose me because you're afraid of losing me. He looked at me. I want you to choose whatever makes you honest. His eyes became wet. Why are you always like this? Like what? Better than I deserve. I smiled. I'm not. He laughed quietly. Yeah, you are. A few days later, Jake asked me to go for a drive. We left Chicago around sunset. He didn't tell me where we were going. We drove along the lake with the windows slightly open. Music played softly. Neither of us talked much. Eventually, he pulled over near a quiet stretch of Lake Michigan. We got out. The sky was orange and purple. The wind was cold. Jake sat on the hood of his car. I stood beside him. Remember when we were 17? He asked. When you were annoying? I was charming. You were annoying. He laughed. Same thing. He looked toward the water. I've been thinking about that night. What night? When you figured out you loved me. I froze. How did you know? I didn't. He smiled. You told me. I laughed. Right? He looked at me. I wish I had known. Why? Because maybe I would have understood why you looked at me the way you did. I stared at him. You noticed. Not then. He paused. But now. He nodded. Now I notice everything. My heart pounded. Jake. He looked away. I don't know if I'm straight. The words came quietly, but they changed the air around us. I didn't move. He continued. I've spent my entire life assuming I was. Because you dated girls? Yeah. That doesn't necessarily answer everything. I know. He looked at me. I've been thinking about the way I feel around you. I waited. I've never wanted to hold another guy's hand. He reached for mine. But I want to hold yours. Our fingers intertwined. I've never wanted to kiss another guy. He looked at me. But I wanted to kiss you. My eyes burned. I've never imagined living with another guy. He smiled slightly. But when I think about my future, he squeezed my hand. You're there. I couldn't speak. Jake looked nervous. Say something. I laughed through tears. I'm trying. He smiled. Okay. We sat together by the lake. For a long time, neither of us said anything. Eventually, Jake whispered, I'm scared. I know. What if I get it wrong? Then we'll deal with it. What if people judge me? They will. He looked at me. That's not very comforting. I smiled. I'm being honest. He laughed. Fair. Then he leaned his head against my shoulder. It was the same gesture he'd made 100 times before. But this time it felt different. This time he knew. And so did I. Our relationship didn't have a name yet. But something had changed. Jake started holding my hand when nobody was around. Then sometimes when people were around, he started sitting closer. He started calling me before anyone else. One night, I was working on an article in the library when he appeared beside me. "Hey!" I looked up. "What are you doing here?" "I missed you." I smiled. "You saw me this morning. That was 9 hours ago. Tragic." "I know." He pulled out the chair beside me. "How's the article?" "Almost finished." "Good." He looked at my screen, then at me. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you still love me?" I stared at him. "Yes." He smiled. "Good." "Why?" He leaned closer. "Because I think I'm falling in love with you." Everything inside me stopped. "What?" He laughed nervously. "I said I think." I shook my head. "No, you definitely said it." "Okay." He looked embarrassed. "I think I'm falling in love with you." I smiled. "You think?" He rolled his eyes. "Fine." He took my hand. "I am." My eyes filled with tears. Jake squeezed my fingers. "I'm not ready to have every answer." "You don't need to." "But I know this." He leaned closer. "I want to find the answers with you." I nodded. "Then we'll do that." He smiled. "Together." Together. And that word became ours. Not because everything was suddenly easy. It wasn't. But because for the first time, Jake wasn't running away from the question. He was walking toward it. Toward me. And I finally understood that the kiss on the rooftop hadn't been the end of our friendship. It had been the beginning of something neither of us had been brave enough to name. Something fragile. Something uncertain. Something real. And for the first time in years, I allowed myself to hope. Not that Jake would become someone else, but that he would finally become honest about who he already was. And maybe, just maybe, that person would choose me. The strange thing about falling in love with your best friend is that the world doesn't suddenly become easier. There is no magical morning when you wake up and every fear has disappeared. There are still questions. Still uncertainty. Still moments when you wonder whether you're moving too fast. For Jake and me, the weeks after his confession were exactly like that. We were closer than we'd ever been. And somehow that made everything more frightening. Jake had started holding my hand when we walked home from campus. At first, only when nobody was around. Then sometimes in crowded places. He would reach for me without thinking. And every time his fingers slipped between mine, my heart still reacted like it was the first time. One afternoon, we were walking through downtown Chicago when Jake suddenly stopped. "What?" He looked at me. "Nothing." "You stopped walking." "I know." "Why?" He smiled. "I just realized I'm holding your hand in public." I looked down. Sure enough, our hands were still joined. "You want to let go?" He shook his head. "No." That one word meant more than he knew, so we kept walking. But not everyone understood. A few weeks later, Jake invited me to a party at his friend's apartment. There were dozens of people there. Music filled every room. People were drinking, laughing, and shouting over each other. I stayed close to Jake. At one point, one of his old football friends, Marcus, noticed our hands. He raised an eyebrow. "Wait." Jake looked at him. "What?" Marcus pointed between us. "You too." Jake glanced at me, then back at Marcus. "Yeah." Marcus looked surprised. "Since when?" Jake smiled. "Since recently." Marcus laughed awkwardly. "Man, I didn't see that coming." Neither did I. But Jake didn't move away. He tightened his fingers around mine. Marcus shrugged. "Well, if you're happy, we are." The conversation moved on, but I could feel Jake's hand trembling slightly. I leaned closer. "You okay?" "Yeah." You don't have to pretend. He looked at me. I'm not pretending. Then he smiled. I'm nervous. Why? Because saying it out loud makes it real. I squeezed his hand. Does that scare you? He thought about it. Not as much as losing you. My heart melted. There were harder conversations too. Jake eventually told his mother. She lived in Naperville, Illinois, and he had been terrified of how she'd react. He asked me to come with him. We sat in the parking lot outside her house for almost 20 minutes. Jake stared through the windshield. You don't have to come inside. I know. I might need you. I'm not going anywhere. He took a breath. Okay. We went inside. His mother, Karen, hugged him immediately. Then she looked at me. Ethan. Hi, Mrs. Carter. She smiled. How many times have I told you to call me Karen? At least 50. Then stop being polite. Jake laughed nervously. We sat in the living room. His mother noticed his expression. What's wrong? Jake looked at me, then back at her. I need to tell you something. She immediately became serious. I'm listening. Jake took a breath. I'm dating Ethan. Silence. His mother looked at me, then at Jake. Okay. Jake blinked. Okay. She smiled. Is that what you were terrified to tell me? Jake laughed nervously. Yes. She shook her head. Jake, I care about one thing. What? Are you happy? He looked at me, then smiled. Yeah. His mother smiled too. Then I'm happy. Jake's shoulders dropped. He looked like someone had just removed 100 pounds from his back. His mother stood and hugged him. Then she hugged me. Take care of each other. I nodded. We will. On the drive home, Jake was quiet. Then he said, That went better than expected. I smiled. Your mom loves you. I know. He looked at me. Thank you for coming. Always. He reached across the center console and took my hand. Not everything was easy. Some people asked questions. Some people made jokes. Some people didn't understand. Jake learned that choosing someone didn't mean the world would suddenly approve. It meant choosing them anyway. One evening, we were walking through a crowded neighborhood when someone shouted something rude. Jake stopped. I grabbed his arm. Leave it. He looked angry. I hate that they think they can. I know. He took a breath. Then he looked at me. Are you okay? I nodded. I'm fine. He studied my face. You sure? Yes. He squeezed my hand. Okay. We kept walking. That night, Jake sat on my balcony. He looked exhausted. I hate that people can make you feel unsafe. I sat beside him. They can't decide who we are. I know. He looked at me. But sometimes I wish I could protect you from everything. You can't. I know. I smiled. But you can stay. He looked at me. I can do that. I rested my head against his shoulder. He kissed my hair. And for a while, we watched the city lights in silence. Our relationship slowly became normal. Not because the world changed, because we did. Jake stopped asking whether he was allowed to love me. He simply did. He still wasn't interested in labels. When someone asked him what he identified as, he'd shrug and say, I'm Jake. And honestly, that was enough. One Saturday, we drove north to Milwaukee. We had no plan. No reservations. No schedule. Just the two of us and a full tank of gas. We stopped at a roadside diner. Jake ordered pancakes. I ordered eggs. 5 minutes later, he reached across the table. Can I have some? You have pancakes. Yours look better. They're literally eggs. Exactly. I laughed. You're impossible. He stole a piece from my plate. Still love me? Unfortunately. He smiled. Good. After lunch, we walked near the lake. The wind was cold. Jake shoved his hands into his pockets. Do you ever think about the future? Sometimes. What do you imagine? I looked at him. Honestly, yeah. I imagine a quiet apartment. He smiled. Me too. Somewhere with lots of windows. Definitely. A kitchen bigger than the one we have now. Absolutely. Maybe a dog. Jake laughed. Definitely a dog. I looked at him. And you? He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I imagine you. I stopped walking. He turned toward me. I don't mean just right now. His voice was soft. I mean years from now. My eyes filled with tears. I don't know what our life will look like. Neither do I. But I know I want you there. I smiled. That's enough. Jake stepped closer. Is it? Yeah. He took my hand. For now. He smiled. Together. Together. By spring, graduation was approaching. Everything was changing. Friends were getting jobs. Apartments were being rented. People were making plans. Jake and I had started looking at places outside Chicago. One evening, we sat on the floor of my apartment surrounded by boxes. Jake held up a picture frame. Do we need this? Yes. Why? Because that's us. The photograph was from high school. We were 17. Jake had his arm around my shoulder. I was smiling at the camera. Neither of us knew what the future would hold. Jake stared at the picture. We look so young. We were. He smiled. I wish I could tell that kid something. What? He looked at the picture. That he's going to be okay. I smiled. That's sweet. He turned toward me. And I'd tell him not to be such an idiot. I laughed. That too. He placed the frame into the box. Then he looked at me. Do you regret anything? I thought about it. Some things. Like what? Not telling you sooner. He nodded. I regret not noticing sooner. I looked at him. You couldn't have known. Maybe. He took my hand. But I should have. Why? Because you were always there. He squeezed my fingers. And somehow, I didn't realize you were the person I was looking for. My eyes burned. Jake smiled. I was too busy looking everywhere else. I leaned closer. You're here now. Yeah. He kissed my forehead. I'm here now. Graduation arrived. The campus was filled with families, cameras, flowers, and proud parents. Jake's mother cried. My parents cried. Jake pretended he wasn't crying. He failed. After the ceremony, we walked away from the crowd. We ended up near the same auditorium where everything had changed. Jake looked at the roof. Want to go up? I smiled. Of course. We climbed the stairs. The rooftop was quiet. Chicago spread beneath us. The same city. The same sky. But we were different people. Jake stood beside me. Do you remember what I said that night? Which part? When you told me you loved me. You said you didn't know what it meant. He nodded. I was terrified. I know. He looked at me. But now I do know. My heart started beating faster. What? He stepped closer. I know that I love you. The words were simple. But I had waited years for them. Jake took my hands. I don't know what label will fit me forever. You don't need one. I know. He smiled. But I know who I want beside me. I squeezed his hands. Who? He laughed. You're annoying. I smiled. Jake. He leaned closer. You. Then he kissed me. Slowly. Softly. Without fear. When we pulled away, I rested my forehead against his. For years, I had wondered what it would feel like if Jake chose me. Now I knew. It didn't feel like winning. It felt like coming home. Jake smiled. So, we really did it. Did what? Survived being us. I laughed. Barely. He wrapped his arms around me. Ready for whatever comes next? I looked at the city. Then at him. With you. Yeah. I smiled. Always. Jake kissed my forehead. And we stood there together while the sun disappeared behind Chicago. For the first time, there was no secret between us. No pretending. No unanswered question. Just two best friends who had spent years trying to understand what their hearts already knew. We were choosing each other. Not because everything was certain, but because some things didn't need certainty. They needed courage. And Jake had finally found his. So had I. A year after graduation, I learned that love doesn't always arrive with certainty. Sometimes it arrives with questions. Sometimes it arrives slowly. And sometimes it looks exactly like the person who has been standing beside you for half your life. The same festival. The same auditorium. The same place where our lives had changed. Jake looked at the invitation. We should go. I raised an eyebrow. Why? Because I want to. That's not a reason. It is. He smiled. And because I want to see the rooftop. My heart softened. So we went. When we arrived in Chicago, the city felt familiar. The streets. The buildings. The coffee shops. The lake. Everything looked almost exactly the same. But I didn't feel like the same person. Neither did Jake. We walked around campus during the afternoon. Old memories followed us everywhere. The library where I came out to him. The coffee shop where we'd spent countless hours. The auditorium. The stairs. Finally, we reached the rooftop. Jake opened the door. Cold air rushed toward us. He smiled. Here we are. I stepped outside. Chicago stretched beneath us. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Jake stood beside me. I was terrified up here. I know. I thought I'd ruined everything. You almost did. He laughed. Fair. I looked at him. But you didn't. He nodded. I didn't. He took my hand. I've been thinking about something. What? Who I was before you. I frowned. What do you mean? I spent so much time trying to prove I was straight. I listened. I dated girls. I talked about girls. I convinced myself I knew exactly who I was. He looked toward the skyline. Then you told me you loved me. I smiled faintly. And everything fell apart. Yeah. He laughed softly. But it needed to. I looked at him. Why? Because I realized I had been living according to an answer I'd never actually questioned. He squeezed my hand. You didn't change me. I didn't. No. He looked directly at me. You made me brave enough to look at myself. My eyes filled with tears. Jake continued. And I realized something. What? I don't need to know exactly what label describes me. I nodded. I just need to know what's true. He stepped closer. And what's true is that I love you. My heart broke open. I smiled. I love you too. He brushed his thumb over my hand. Do you remember what you said after I kissed you? What? You asked me why. I laughed. I remember. And I said I didn't know. You did. He smiled. I know now. Why? He looked at me. Because I wanted to. I waited. And because when I thought you were leaving, I realized I didn't want a life where you weren't beside me. My eyes filled with tears. Jake! He leaned closer. Can I kiss you? I smiled. You still ask. Always. I nodded. He kissed me. Slowly. Softly. There was no fear this time. No confusion. No need to pretend. When he pulled away, he rested his forehead against mine. I love you. I love you too. Below us, the festival music started. People cheered. The city moved around us. And somehow, the place where I had once confessed my deepest secret had become the place where I finally understood that I hadn't lost Jake. I'd found him. Not because he'd magically changed. Not because he'd suddenly become someone else. But because he had finally stopped being afraid of what his heart was telling him. That night, we went to a small diner near campus. Jake ordered pancakes. I ordered eggs. 5 minutes later, he reached across the table. Can I have some? You have pancakes. Yours look better. They're eggs. I know. He stole a piece. I shook my head. You're still impossible. He smiled. And you're still in love with me. Unfortunately. Good. I looked at him. Very confident. I've earned it. I laughed. After dinner, we walked through the quiet streets. The air was cold. Jake slipped his hand into mine. We passed students laughing outside a coffee shop. Nobody knew our story. They didn't need to. Some stories belong only to the people who live them. Jake stopped under a streetlight. One more thing. What? He reached into his jacket. My heart skipped. He pulled out a small photograph. I recognized it immediately. The picture from high school. Jake and I at 17. His arm around my shoulder. Me smiling at the camera. Neither of us knowing what the future would bring. You kept that. He smiled. Of course. I took it from him. Why? Because I like remembering where we started. I looked at the photograph, then at him. We were idiots. Definitely. You especially. Obviously. He laughed. Then his expression became serious. I wish I could go back and tell that version of us something. What? That everything would be okay. I smiled. You think it would have helped? Probably not. Why? Because we'd still have made all the same mistakes. I laughed. True. He stepped closer. But maybe that's okay. I looked at him. Why? Because every wrong turn eventually brought me here. He touched my cheek. To you. My eyes burned. Jake kissed my forehead. Then we kept walking. Years later, people would ask us how we met. Jake always told the short version. We've known each other since we were kids. Then he'd look at me. I'd smile. The truth was much longer. We met because of a blue crayon. We became friends because Jake couldn't stop making me laugh. We stayed friends because neither of us knew how to imagine life without the other. I fell in love first. Jake took longer to understand. And then, one night under the Chicago sky, my straight best friend kissed me. That kiss didn't magically solve everything. It didn't give Jake every answer. It didn't erase the fear. It didn't guarantee that our future would always be easy. But it gave us something more important. Honesty. Jake finally admitted that he didn't understand every part of himself. I finally admitted that I couldn't keep pretending my feelings didn't exist. And together we stopped running. Sometimes love isn't about knowing exactly where the road ends. Sometimes it's about finding someone willing to walk it with you. Jake was that person for me. My best friend. My favorite problem. My safest place. The boy who stole my crayons. The man who stole my heart. And every once in a while, when we were sitting together on our Seattle balcony and the rain was falling against the windows, Jake would look at me with that same crooked smile he had when we were kids. I'd ask, "What?" He'd shake his head. Nothing. You keep staring. I know. Why? He'd reach for my hand. Because I still can't believe I get to have you. I'd laugh. You've had me since 3rd grade. Yeah. He'd squeeze my fingers. But I didn't know what I had. Then he'd lean over and kiss me. And every time I'd remember the rooftop, the cold wind, the city lights, the fear, the confession, and the moment Jake crossed the distance between us. The moment my best friend kissed me. The moment everything changed. Not because the kiss made our love real. It was real long before that. The kiss simply gave us the courage to stop hiding it. And that was the greatest thing Jake ever gave me. Not certainty. Not promises that life would always be easy. Just the courage to be honest. With ourselves. With each other. And with the love that had been waiting between us all along. Jake once thought he knew exactly who he was. I once thought loving him meant I would have to love him from a distance forever. We were both wrong. Because sometimes the person you're waiting for isn't someone new. Sometimes they're already beside you, laughing with you, fighting with you, calling you at 3 in the morning, stealing your fries, wearing your hoodie, holding your hand when you're afraid. And sometimes, your best friend kisses you, and that one kiss changes everything. Jake looked at me from across our little Seattle living room. You hungry? I laughed. Always. Pizza? Obviously. He stood. Come on. I followed him into the kitchen. He opened the refrigerator. There was almost nothing inside. I stared at him. You said we had food. We have cheese. That's not food. It's the beginning of pizza. I laughed. He wrapped an arm around my shoulders. You still think I'm a disaster? Absolutely. Still love me? I looked up at him. More than ever. He smiled. Good. Then he kissed me. And this time there was no question, no fear, no confusion. Just us. 2 best friends. 2 people who had finally found the courage to choose each other. And a love story that had begun with a stolen blue crayon, and somehow ended with the simplest truth of all. I had loved Jake Carter for years, and Jake Carter had finally learned how to love me back.